Welcome back to the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast here on Wednesday, October 10th, 2018, right here on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find this there. And on today's episode, I have a really special conversation I had with USA Today NFL writer Nate Davis about his latest power rankings, because he has a lot of switching up, some at the top, some teams in the top 5 maybe you wouldn't expect. I'm looking at you, the Chargers. So I had a really interesting conversation with him about his power rankings and what he views about the NFL right now. What were some of the biggest changes this week?
Actually, there weren't a ton of changes this week, Jackson. Kind of stable at the top with the Rams, Chiefs, and Saints staying 1 through 3. I guess kind of the biggest one at the top there would have been Jacksonville. I think I dropped them about 4 spots after the clunker in Kansas City. Ironically, I think the Bears moved up a few spots even though they didn't play, just because a lot of teams I had around them the previous week had lost. But really it was Jacksonville, and then I guess you could also say, Cleveland. Cleveland's a team that with a break, here and there, they could be 5-0. I was at the game a few weeks ago against the Jets when Baker Mayfield made his debut, and they're definitely a different team with him, and I think they're going to be at least relevant into December. And if things start going right for them, and they get a little bit more luck like they had Sunday, they could be a wild card team.
Yeah, they definitely a team that has really transformed with that new quarterback. But I want to start really at the top of these rankings. Number 1 and number 2, the Rams and Chiefs, the 2 undefeated teams. In your mind, how separated are they from the rest of the NFL? How are they their own separate tier, way out ahead of everybody, or are they closer to other teams than we think?
Yeah, I think if we've seen anything this season, that per usual, parity is in play, and anyone can beat anyone on any given Sunday. Particularly when you think about Buffalo beating the Vikings in Week 2, which to me is still the biggest shocker of the season. But the Rams almost lost in Seattle. A team that they're clearly more talented than, a Seattle team that lost Earl Thomas, but they almost snuck away with that win. And the Chiefs, as bad as their defense is, I think that they're going to have some issues at some point, and particularly if they get in the hole. And you're asking a young quarterback at that point to maybe win you a game and pull one out of the fire, and maybe he reverts to some of his gunslinger mentality and makes some bad throws. I'm still kind of waiting to see Pat Mahomes have some bad games. I thought it would be more of an up and down year for him than it has been so far. But these teams are beatable. I think probably most people are going to pick the Patriots to beat the Chiefs Sunday night. So. It's a close league, and with the exception of very, very few teams, and maybe none. Again, as I cited the Buffalo win, I don't think anybody's unbeatable in this league at all.
Yes, certainly. You always see that with teams. So they get off to hot starts, and before you know it, we've seen this with the Chiefs even before, getting out to these ridiculously hot starts and then just kind of falling off as the season goes on.
Yeah, we're already kind of talking about, this game with the Patriots could have playoff implications and that kind of thing for home field. But my response to that is kind of, so what? The Chiefs haven't won a home playoff game in Arrowhead Stadium since Joe Montana was their quarterback in 1993. They might be better off, not getting home field advantage. So, it'll get decided between the lines, as it always is.
Yeah, definitely. So another team I want to focus on is you have the Chargers at number 5 in your rankings. The Chargers are usually a team who usually struggle sometimes getting out to that quick start and maybe do well down the stretch. What has kind of been different for the Chargers this year? They do have 2 losses, but both are to the Rams and Chiefs. What are you seeing from this Chargers team so far?
Well, the Chargers are the team I picked to go to the Super Bowl for the AFC. So I guess as much as you try not to be, I am a little invested in them. But yeah, like you said, they missed the playoffs last year by virtue of a tiebreaker, and after overcoming, like you said, an 0-4 start last year. And they are, they're sitting at 3-2 now. Like you said, their only losses are to 2 teams that haven't lost yet. That being said, their 3 wins haven't necessarily been that impressive. Squeaking behind. It's by the 49ers without Jimmy Garoppolo, and looked a little better against the Raiders last week. But I am concerned with them, and that it seems like they still, this team, as much talent as it has, continues to be plagued by its special teams. And we saw punt blocks against the Rams, and Caleb Sturgis continues to be rather scattershot in the kicking game. But From a talent standpoint, the Chargers to me are about as good as a team as you're going to find in the league, top to bottom, and will be better, when Joey Bosa presumably comes back in a few weeks. And I think he's really going to have, quite an effect on that defense. So I think they'll get better and better. They did last year. They improved throughout the course of the season. They've got two really good coordinators in Gus Bradley and Ken Wisenhunt. So I think this team has staying power, and they're probably perfectly happy kind of, lying in the weeds to some degree to other people. But I think that they kind of deserve to be in that top 10. I'm comfortable with them at 5.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's awesome to see. I mean, for any football fan, we've always known Phillip Rivers being one of these quarterbacks who is always overlooked because of the team maybe surrounding him. But now, it finally is starting to feel like that Los Angeles is giving him a team to build around and maybe take him far in the playoffs, something we haven't seen in quite some time.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, on both sides of the ball, you can't ask for much more. I mean, he's got some reinforcements on the offensive line this year. Mike Williams has really stepped up next to Keenan Allen in the receiving game. Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler are a running back combo we don't talk about enough. With guys like Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara around the league, but they're right there in terms of a combo below the Saints duo league wide. Eckler was the top rated guy by Pro Football Focus among all running backs a few weeks ago, amazingly, even though he doesn't play all that much. But and then again, like I said, Bosa's going to be coming back at some point. Derwin James has been as advertised, at safety, first round pick. To me, again, the thing they got to worry about is the special teams, and we always talk about it being the third phase, and say what you will about that philosophy, but it's definitely an area that's cost the Chargers in the past. So if they can kind of get things straight there, like you said, I think Phillip Rivers has all the talent in the world around him, and certainly for a team that, or at least for a player like Phillip Rivers, whose window you would think is going to start shutting here fairly soon. He's got everything he needs to get that elusive ring, I think.
Mm-hmm. And now going back to the team you kind of touched on a little bit earlier, the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that you have at number 8 in your rankings, dropping from number 4. The Jaguars, we saw them last year in the AFC Championship game, a team that we realized has all this talent on both sides of the ball, but now they're struggling even to win this division with a team like Tennessee. They're tied right now, both at 3-2, Houston's at 2-3. What are you seeing from Jacksonville right now in terms of, I guess, their staying power and their prospects going down the stretch?
Well, I think by definition they're going to be an inconsistent team just because their quarterback is an inconsistent player. Sometimes it's great, and then as we saw in Kansas City Sunday, sometimes it's not so great. And they're also missing their best offensive player in Leonard Fournette, and will be again this weekend. So they've got issues right now on offense. Those issues could get better. The receivers have been better than I thought, despite the loss of Marquise Lee in the preseason. But getting Leonard Fournette back will help on both sides of the ball because he's also a guy that can grind the clock and keep the defense off the field to some degree. But this is also a team that's going to be able to win 9-6 kind of games at times, but they're also going to be able to lose 9-6 kind of games, as we saw against Tennessee. And you mentioned the division. I mean, I think the AFC South is quietly one of the better divisions in the league. The Colts have been much better than I thought they would be from a competitive standpoint. It's not reflected in their records yet. But the Titans are showing that they're going to be in the playoff mix, and the Texans, who we thought were on their deathbed a few weeks ago, plenty of talent on that team, and they're now starting to wake up and have won 2 in a row. And like you said, they're only one back now to Tennessee and Jacksonville in the standings, and I don't think they're going to be going anywhere. So. It's going to be a tight division. The AFC is going to be, I think, tight overall. I mean, we're seeing that the North is very good from top to bottom. So playoff spots are going to be, at a premium, and some good teams are not going to make it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was literally just about to bring up the AFC North because in your ranking, something that really jumped out at me was all 4 of the teams in the AFC North you have ranked in the top 13, the Browns at 13, Steelers at 11, Bengals at 7. So you clearly really value, and the Ravens at 10. Excuse me. You really value this division, and you look at it by your rankings as arguably the best division in pro football. What is it about the AFC North that is so good this year?
Well, I mean, it's usually a competitive division. I mean, in the past, the other three teams, usually got 3 bye weeks because they had the one and they had the two against Cleveland. But that's not the case this year. And at some level, I think it's going to probably hurt this division from a playoff standpoint because I think these teams are probably going to all be clustered in that kind of 7 to 10 win range, and maybe only one of them, given that it looks like they're all going to beat up on each other, maybe only one of them is actually going to advance into the playoff field. But Cincinnati's been a talented team for years. They've fixed their blocking issues from last year and have a lot of depth on both sides of the ball, a lot of talent. They're out in front right now. You could make an argument they're the best team in the AFC, just given that they're certainly better balanced on both sides of the ball than Kansas City is. But yeah, they're playing outstanding football right now. And then we'll see with the Ravens. I have some concerns with them, and if Joe Flacco has another bad game here or there, are they going to get a little antsy to get a longer look at Lamar Jackson? And then the Steelers are playing better. My question with them is just always the off the field drama and the self-inflicted wounds that they tend to invite. And obviously, it's going to be interesting to see how Le'Veon Bell reintegrates into a locker room that was clearly upset with him when he didn't show up for week 1. So there's plenty still to play out here, and it should be fun to watch. But I don't know that we're going to see, as good as this division is top to bottom. It's as you would say, the floor is high, but I'm not sure how high the ceiling is, and I think maybe we only see one of these teams playing in January.
Well, Nate, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, and where can people check your stuff out at? Yeah,
you can always find me at nfl.usatoday.com and tweet out most of my stuff at by Nate Davis, BY Nate Davis on Twitter, so you can find me there.
Well, Nate, thank you so much. I'll have all those links in the description of the podcast, and thanks so much for doing this. I definitely have to have you on again sometime.
Okay, my pleasure. Sounds good.
Again, a big thank you to Nate for coming onto the podcast. Remember, check down in the description on whatever platform you're listening to find links to his Twitter as well as all of his work for USA Today. And with that, that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast. Remember, go back in this podcast feed, whatever platform you're listening on, to check out maybe yesterday's episode of the podcast where I talked with Larry Holy of WGN-TV, in Chicago about Notre Dame football, and I also discussed Jay Ajayi and the Eagles running back situation. So go check that out, and also check out the other podcasts in this feed as well. There's the Jackson Neill Music Podcast where I talk to music writers and give my own opinions on latest albums and releases and things like that, as well as the Anything Goes with Jackson Neill podcast where I interview musicians, and that's updated, I guess, throughout the week. Next episode coming tomorrow where I talk with Nashville rapper KB about his upcoming album, One you guys have got to listen to as soon as it drops. So check out all of those episodes in these podcast feeds wherever you're listening to it on whatever platform you like. Also, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JacksonNeill20. Those links are in the description as well. There I post additional content of the interviews, as well as keep you guys updated on when all the podcasts are releasing. So check out all of those. And with that, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you all next time.